You're listening to the Full Court Press with your host, Drew Duncan. Don't you dare touch that dial. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Full Court Press. I am your host, Drew Duncan. I am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Drew Duncan 83. The Atlanta Falcons and the Philadelphia Eagles in a divisional playoff game. The big talk and conversation all week long was Matt Ryan, the Atlanta Falcons, their, quote, road to redemption, how the Philadelphia Eagles were the first ever one seed to be an underdog to a 6th seed in the playoffs. Obviously, the given reason, no Carson Wentz. Nick Foles was not impressive throughout the last couple of games of the season. Philadelphia ends up coming away with a victory. I tell you what, it was like night and day watching Nick Foles, really the entire offense for the Philadelphia Eagles in that football game. For one half of football, the Philadelphia Eagles played horrendous, grotesque, ugly, nightmarish football. I think it was bad all the way around, except for the defense. The defense played outstanding throughout the entire game. Obviously, they held Atlanta to 10 points. But there's a lot to get to, and there's a lot to dissect in this football game. Look, as I've already said, the Philadelphia Eagles played bad football, not just offensively. Special teams, they get in the end zone. What happens? Doink, the extra point. Missed it. Had a punt return that ended in a fumble that gave Atlanta very good field position. I mean, they were just playing bad football. And, you know, Philadelphia fans, who are generally some of the rowdiest in the entire United States, were fairly quiet and holding their breath for a good majority of that football game. I mean, you could just tell that they were all worried sick about how the Philadelphia Eagles are playing. And I thought that at some point they were all thinking to themselves, you know what, this is all just going to come to an end. And as the game went along, the crowd got a little more intense and a little more into it. But I think the general feeling was, and this is what I had, and that was the running game could be good enough for Philadelphia and their defense could be good enough in order to stop Atlanta. Nick Foles played bad football in that first half, though. There's no denying it. Look, that first half, he looked worse than a rookie quarterback. He had a lot of wide open receivers. I mean, because they were throwing the ball on first down. They threw it right out of the gate. Got a man wide open down the field. He slips, throws it off his back foot, tries to regain, doesn't quite get it there. They get bailed out by the pass interference, end up turning, you know, the fumbles, the things that were just going on. You had guys open on the outside. They missed a lot of first down chances because of missed throws by Nick Foles. There were times where he just zipped it in there too hard, needed to put a little more air into the football, could not get it done. Second half of that game, though, he looked like a veteran. The ball was coming out of his hands quick off the RPO plays. Fake it, throw it. Read the defense better, quicker. The offense just seemed to move better. They ran a lot more slant and cut routes, a lot more out routes. Nick Foles was stepping up in the pocket, making plays. He almost looked like the Nick Foles of 2013, right? The one that everybody was talking about. Can he be the Nick Foles that he was in 2013 when he threw 27 touchdown passes and only 2 interceptions during the regular season, forgetting that they lost their playoff game? Nick Foles is kind of an anomaly, isn't he? And he's going to be a huge topic of discussion, and rightfully so. You're taking over a guy in Carson Wentz that everybody believed in, having an MVP season, goes down with an ACL injury. You're coming in. There's a lot of pressure on you. I wouldn't want to be Nick Foles in that situation. I wouldn't want to be anybody in that situation. Very few quarterbacks could have handled it the way that Nick Foles has. And not in terms of his play on the field per se, but in how he's handled the pressure from the media, the way that he's, you know, really kind of carried himself. But you could tell the nerves were clearly there in the first half of that game. They had missed handoffs. That wasn't even Nick Foles' fault. Fumbled handoff. They were trying to get a little too cute in the red zone. They couldn't convert touchdowns for the most part in that game in the red zone. It was a really difficult game to watch if you're a Philadelphia Eagle fan. And as an Eagles fan, you have to wonder, how will they be able to compete with either the Saints or the Vikings going forward, despite the fact that they're going to have home field advantage no matter what or who they play. Defensively, they did everything right in that football game. They were all over wide receivers. Nobody made catches that were wide open for the most part in that game. Everybody had some sort of pressure on them. It was difficult for Atlanta to do anything for the majority of that football game. And honestly, if it hadn't been for good field position for the most of that game, they probably wouldn't have got any points. Obviously, the first drive for Atlanta, looked decent, went down, got a field goal. But had it not been for the fumbled punt return, I don't think that the Atlanta Falcons would have scored the rest of the way down. And even then, in the red zone, during that possession, how many times, how many plays did it take before they finally punched it in? And to be honest with you, that was a bad call. Bad call in the red zone on that scoring drive. Both of them were. I didn't see pass interference. I didn't see hits to the helmet. It looked to me like they were hits in the shoulder pad. I didn't see anything that should have resulted in the penalties that were handed out to the Eagles in that moment. I mean, the Eagles got out of there by the skin of their teeth, to be honest with you. Not only was there some bad officiating in that football game, at least for those two calls, but between the bad offense that they played, the inability to score in the red zone, that defense is the real MVP. Nick Foles played good football in the second half, but he didn't play spectacular football. He just did exactly what was needed to be done. And the main thing was it was a team effort because we saw a lot of effort plays from wide receivers and running backs in the second half. You take Ajayi, the running back, on that swing play, converting that 3rd and 7, getting a nice long gain. The offensive line protected perfectly, let those guys in perfectly. Ajayi gets one block, sets him up. He's able to peel down the sideline and get a lot of yards. We saw Torrey Smith make an effort play to get a first down. We saw a lot of effort plays from wide receivers in that game. Aguilar on some of those, reverse plays. They ran that inside play in the first half. We saw a lot of effort plays on the part of the Philadelphia Eagles where they just gave a little bit more than Atlanta did. And on this day, that's really what it took to win this game. Just giving a little bit more than your opponent in order to win a game of football on Saturday afternoon. Moving forward for both of these football teams, look, I'm going to give all the credit to the defense of the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of people may say that Matt Ryan played poor. The receiving core played poor. A lot of people talked about that play in the end zone. Obviously, Julio Jones at the end of that game, he wanted a penalty. The way that I look at it was some rough football going on by both guys. You've got Julio Jones trying to get inside positioning. He was using himself in a way that he shouldn't have been using himself. He was trying to cushion his body. The referee acknowledged that. He stepped out of bounds before the ball went into the air anyways. So if it would have been anything, it would have been offsetting penalties because you would have had pass interference. Then you would have had a player that went out, didn't reestablish himself. Then he goes up for a pass. He's the first one to touch it, and he wouldn't have come down in the end zone anyways. So we would have been talking about what most likely would have been offsetting penalties, and all it would have done was given Atlanta another shot. Would they have been able to convert? It's really anybody's guess. That's a debate that we could have all day long. I'm not going to get into it. The bottom line is they didn't convert at that moment. They didn't convert for 99% of that football game, and that's why they weren't successful. But they weren't successful because of the pressure that the Philadelphia Eagles defense was putting on receivers, running backs, and Matt Ryan for the entire football game, period. Is Matt Ryan done? Is his career over the way that everybody's starting to overblow this thing? I don't think so. I think he's still Matty Ice. I think he's still one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I'd take him on my roster. But I know this, Atlanta's in a precarious situation right now because they've had a lot of great regular seasons that have ended with one and done playoff stints. They had one wild card victory before they finally had the Super Bowl run. They had the lead. Everybody took Atlanta to win that game, or at least I think a lot of people were rooting for Atlanta to win that game. You're dominating for the better part of that game, and you lose. Then you play the team that you played in the Super Bowl, and you get beat down. It was really foggy in the second half, but in the first half, they weren't doing anything anyways. Atlanta had a topsy-turvy season. They started out 3-0, then they dropped 3 in a row. They end up coming on strong, winning 7 out of their last 9. Will Atlanta, look, Philadelphia was beating themselves in the majority of this football game. It wasn't anything that Atlanta was doing per se that was really stifling the Philadelphia Eagles. Doug Peterson's play calling was as good as it's ever been. I don't think you can look at the coach and point to him. He was throwing on first down as if he still had Carson Wentz in there. He was still running RPO plays as if he had Carson Wentz in there. He was still running at least mock option run plays that Foles, honestly, on a couple of them, could have kept himself a few times and picked up significant yardage and elected not to for whatever reason. Philly was beating themselves because of poor execution on the field. It really wasn't anything that Atlanta was doing. So moving forward, if you're Atlanta, what do? Do you say, well, maybe we need a new coordinator? Maybe we need, this guy or that guy on defense? Do we go out and try and find another wide receiver when we've already got Julio Jones and Sanu Jr.? Do we replace Matt Ryan? Do we get rid of our head coach? Look, I don't really know that you change anything at this point for Atlanta. They're having winning seasons. For the most part, they're playing winning football. But the missing element is the inability to close games. Just can't get it done. In the fourth quarter, they're stifling. And you could point to any number of things, but whatever it is, something is missing late in ball games. You could blame preparation. You could blame coaching. You could allude to play calling. You could say whatever you want to, and none of it would probably even be wrong at this point. And to be honest with you, it would all be subjective. Moving forward for the Philadelphia Eagles, well, they're going to have to make sure that Nick Foles is consistent for an entire football game. You play the way that you did offensively, and really this is on the entire offense and special teams in the first half against the New Orleans, against a Minnesota who's got a hot item right now in Case Keenum. You've got Sam Bradford back off of IR. You've got 3 quarterbacks right now in Minnesota who are all very capable passers that could probably get the job done at the end of the day. Maybe not a Sam Bradford, but he's at least good enough to be game manager at this point, you could say. Do you really think that the Philadelphia Eagles, how long can they stop a guy like a Drew Brees? How long can they stop an offense that has been so wide open and diverse in the Minnesota Vikings? You've got the run game right now with New Orleans that is just dominating. You've got a guy like Drew Brees who's playing as hungry football as ever. How long and how many times can you put your defense in the kind of situation that the offense and special teams was doing for the better part of this game? Kudos to Peterson. Kudos to Nick Foles. You know, those guys made adjustments and got it together in the second half. But I think if you do that against the New Orleans Saints or even the Minnesota Vikings, you probably don't win either one of those games. This is the Full Court Press. I am Drew Duncan. We've got a lot more to talk about, obviously, over the next couple of days. We're going to be talking college basketball. We're going to be talking about NFL playoffs. Obviously, we're going to be discussing the New England Patriots and Tom Brady dominating all the stuff that everybody was talking about all week long. Oh, the ride is over for New England. Well, they dominate Tennessee. So, obviously, we've got plenty to discuss. I am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Drew Duncan 83. I am your host, Drew Duncan. This is the Full Court Press. Don't you dare touch that dial.